than to try to rule over 6 or 7 billion. And again, the avian flu could definitely be the card they play. This weaponized flu could be the card that they would play in order to implement that. And again, I've got teachings up on YouTube and on sermon audio. If you go up on YouTube, you can Dr. Scott Johnson and avian, or avian flu. Going further, serving one's country in an uninformed armed forces has traditionally been considered honorable. I don't know what he's trying to say there. Just serving one's country in the armed forces has traditionally been considered honorable because propaganda has conditioned the masses to believe that such brave men and women are serving and protecting their country. We are taught from childhood that it is patriotic to support our troops, but the horrid fact is that such people knowingly serve not the country, but to protect and expand the profits and best interests of corporations and governments. War is a racket, plain and simple. Those who participate in wars are considered expendable by those who send them to wars and invariable profits from them. And make no mistake, wars are started and fought for profits and the control of real estate and resources previously not under the jurisdiction of the aggressor nation. This juggernaut is raging down the tracks at breakneck speed, determined to economically enslave masses and surrender control to rule of a few self-appointed elite few. After 50 years of skillful mental conditioning of the masses, the likelihood is slim to none. Too many have been exploited and persuaded to label the alert among us as kooks, nuts, conspiracy theorists, and alike. He goes on to say the stock market continued its 5-day tumble into below the waterline, again territory today, dropping another 508 points. He goes on to say, still there are folks who cannot see the bottom falling out, and there are those who see it but deny it's happening. Meanwhile, the banksters and their corporate friends are getting rich extracting money from us. Does that make Americans mad? A few, yes, but nowhere nearly enough of them. Most sadly don't even know what the stock market is. Most sadly mistakenly believe McCain and Obama are telling them the truth. When the typical person thinks or speaks of other people's money, the reference is to borrowing, financing, or leveraging transactions. When banksters, CEOs, and the senior staffs think of speaking of other people's money, they are referring to stealing their stockholders' money, their employees' pension funds, and the public's money. Businesses are closing their doors from sea to shining sea. Even eBay has laid off employees. Things are getting very serious. Anyone who isn't prepared to hunker down and survive hard times is in for a very rough ride. Martial law is on our doorsteps. The country has been taken from the people by the blood-sucking banksters and the corporate predators who are continuing waging war against the people. There is no longer a working constitution. There hasn't been for a long time. In closing, I invite all the readers to call me a kook or conspiracy nut on June 1st, 2009. Till then, people would be wise to pay attention. That's from Fred Marshall Jr. And here's the last article today, and I'm trying to finish this up before we get to the end of the allotted time for the second part of the teaching. This one is entitled, "The Troops Are Here. FEMA Sources Confirm Coming Martial Law. German-USA Parallels," by Pastor Ed Watson, who is a pastor up on Sermon Audio that I recommend too. "I am not in agreement with feminism," he said, "but when looking for truth, we often miss it because we so quickly dismiss those we disagree with on a particular issue and or reject all they have to say." He's in reference to that Naomi Campbell thing, the internet interview with her up on YouTube and through Alex Jones, and it is a good interview. And although I know she's a feminist and she's wrote many books, pretty much for the most part what she's saying is true, okay? And but anyway, beyond that, he says a historic coup is taking place right now in America, hidden in plain sight. "I used to wonder about Germans in World War II and what would lead up to it. I thought, how could so many people be duped into following so blindly their leaders into the acts of aggression and submit so willingly to oppression by their own government against them? For people to do this, most must believe their leader is a leader and not a public servant. Their military must believe in protecting their commander-in-chief instead of the rule of law. They must believe God is with them." On the German Nazis' belt buckles, they had a phrase that said "Gott mit uns," which meant God with us. So in other words, they thought God was with them. Okay, they really were so delusional that they thought God was with them. And that's where a lot of our military is right now as well. He said, I talked to an Army Ranger last week, and when we told him, now this is Pastor Ed Watson, he talked to an Army Ranger last week, and when we told him of American troops going to be used against American civilians in times of unrest, his response, this wonderful Army Ranger, he should scare all of the unsaved Americans. He said, I'll do what I gotta do. End of quote. To which I replied, you took an oath to defend the Constitution, and you do not have to obey illegal or immoral orders. He said, well, I'll do what I gotta do. Oh boy, isn't that just brilliant thinking, you know? So he says our troops are being trained now to not protect us, but to oppress us and to kill us, as far as I'm concerned. If he's going to do what he's got to do, that includes death. Pre-World War II Hitler used the Bible and the effective propaganda to make the German people believe he was a Christian. He trained clergy to use Romans 13 as a God-ordained ordinance to obey their government. Under him, he had taken pictures and published of himself coming out of a church and looking pious with a glowing cross above his head. Now, I have done a whole teaching on Romans 13. Just key in Romans 13. I'm not even going to say anything more about that. I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But it's been done in the past by Hitler. Obey the law of the land, okay, and obey the powers that be, these types of things. See my teaching on Romans 13, and we get into that thoroughly. And then he goes on to say, he used the troops to fight the communist terrorists who set the fire to their Reichstag, which was completely staged, pre-planned, and carried out by his own government to consolidate power under Hitler. And then came the Night of the Long Knives, where they killed a lot of the brown shirts to eliminate any further competition. Then he goes on to say, what is truly frightening is to see the Christians following the exact same pattern under our government. Bush's grandfather, Prescott Bush, helped to finance the Nazis and launder Nazi money well into World War II. This is a proven fact. We talked about this last week in the pharmakia thing with I.G. Farben, okay? So Prescott Bush helped to finance the Nazis, launder Nazi money into World War II until their banks were shut down by the FBI for that very purpose. Christians today think they're being told the truth by NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, just like those who were under the influence of the minister of propaganda in Nazi Germany, Joseph Goebbels. The Americans today think themselves too good, too smart, too Christian to be duped like the Germans were. Remember, pride goeth before a fall and a haughty spirit before destruction. Does anyone see any parallels yet? In Germany, people were fractured into so many groups that when their neighbors were taken away as suspects siding with the enemy, the people applauded the government for ridding it of their unpatriotic traitors. Until it was time for them, their sons were killed for fighting in what is widely recognized now as evil today. Most knew nothing of death camps, and for all they knew, they were fighting against terrorism and for freedom. Why does the U.S. government have over 600 FEMA concentration camps, fully staffed but empty, in the United States? Now, I've done a whole section on this in my avian flu presentation. You can go up there and look at on the concentration camps. These camps can contain 16 million Americans. If you want to find that on YouTube, just key in Dr. Scott Johnson and then concentration or camps. You'll find it. It's only 10 minutes long. These camps can contain 16 million Americans. Now, currently, we have 2 million prisoners in our prisons today. And now we do have the highest prisoner per capita rate on the planet. Okay? But we have 2 million prisoners in our prisons today. Is there such a crime wave that we need to multiply that capacity times 8? Well, there will be when martial law is implemented, most likely. Why did the president wage war on freedom in the name of fighting terrorism? Why do so many Christians still believe this nonsense, and worse yet, support it? We are given 2 phony choices, McCain and Obama, and are told, pick one. Are we to believe that the unbelieving McCain is the choice of the conservative Americans? Yet when a neoconservative is given the choice between the lesser of 2 evils, he will still always be forced to pick evil. I mean, if you feel as though you have to do it, you're still going to pick evil. Being conformed to this world and being biblically illiterate. He thinks God is looking down from heaven and smiling on McCain because he or she is a nice guy or gal and supposedly loves their children and their pet dog. God says to abhor, and that is to utterly hate evil and to not